Winter 1941. German forces advanced deep into Soviet territory, confident in swift victory. But Russian soldiers witnessed something their enemy hadn't prepared for. Nature itself became the battlefield. One critical miscalculation changed everything. A secret the Germans discovered too late, and a realization that shifted the entire campaign. What they learned would haunt Germany's military strategy forever. The confident advance. Summer 1941. Operation Barbarossa began with overwhelming force. German divisions rolled across the Soviet border with modern equipment and battle-tested strategies. They had taken down France in just 6 weeks. Now they believed Russia would fall even faster. Russian soldiers watched the enemy advance with superior weapons and coordination. Village after village fell. Cities were surrounded. The German military machine seemed unstoppable. Their leader believed victory would come before the leaves changed color. But as weeks turned to months, something started to shift. The Russians weren't surrendering as expected. They kept fighting, even when surrounded. German supply lines stretched longer and thinner across the vast landscape. Then the calendar moved toward October. Russian soldiers began to notice something their enemy hadn't considered. The temperature started dropping. And the Germans, they were still wearing summer uniforms. The first sign of the miscalculation was about to reveal itself. The temperature drops. The critical miscalculation, weather preparation. November arrived early and harsh. Temperatures fell below freezing almost overnight. Russian soldiers, prepared with winter gear and layered clothing, watched as German troops began to struggle with the cold. The critical miscalculation? Germany's leadership believed the campaign would end before winter. They sent millions of soldiers east without proper winter equipment. No heavy coats, no insulated boots, no antifreeze for vehicles. Russian defenders noticed German soldiers wrapping newspapers under their uniforms for warmth. They saw enemy troops taking coats from fallen comrades. The powerful fighting force from summer now shivered in defensive positions. Equipment began failing. Vehicle engines wouldn't start in the morning cold. Weapons jammed because metal parts froze together. Supply trucks got stuck in early snow. What looked like a small oversight became a massive operational problem. Russian soldiers realized something important. Their greatest ally had just arrived. General Winter had joined the defense. But the cold was just the beginning of Germany's problems. The frozen battlefield, nature becoming the enemy. December brought temperatures that dropped to -20 degrees and lower. Russians were used to this. Their grandfathers had lived through winters like this. German troops had never experienced anything close. The landscape transformed completely. Rivers froze solid. Snow buried roads. Entire divisions slowed to a crawl. German soldiers stopped advancing and started just trying to survive each night. Russian defenders noticed frostbite spread through enemy ranks. Fingers turned black. Toes couldn't feel the ground. Medical tents filled with soldiers who never faced combat. They simply couldn't handle the cold. Equipment that worked perfectly in France became useless metal in Russian winter. Tank engines cracked when started. Rifle bolts froze in place. Even food rations turned rock solid and couldn't be eaten without fires. Fires that revealed positions to Russian observers. The modern German military machine, designed for speed and power, ground to a halt. Nature didn't care about superior tactics or advanced technology. And then the Russians discovered something the Germans were desperately hiding.
The hidden weakness. The secret discovered too late. Russian soldiers captured German supply documents that revealed a shocking truth. Germany's leadership knew winter was coming, but they gambled everything on winning before it arrived. The secret? There was no backup plan. Supply chains had been designed for a 3-month campaign, not a winter siege. Warehouses back in Germany held winter gear, but it was thousands of miles away. The railway system couldn't transport enough supplies to the front lines. Priorities went to ammunition and food, not warm clothing. German commanders sent desperate messages requesting winter equipment. The responses came back, nothing available. The entire strategy depended on speed. When speed failed, everything collapsed. Russian intelligence officers studied these captured documents carefully. They realized their enemy wasn't just unprepared, they were trapped. Millions of soldiers stood in frozen positions with no way to properly equip them before spring. This wasn't a small mistake. This was a fundamental failure in planning. But what Russian soldiers realized next changed how they fought the entire campaign. The strategic shift, the realization that changed everything. Russian commanders reached a critical realization. They didn't need to defeat the German military in direct combat right now. They just needed to survive until winter did the work for them. The strategy shifted completely. Instead of large battles, Russian forces used tactical retreats. They pulled back, stretched German supply lines even further, and let the cold weaken their enemy. Small raids at night kept Germans awake and burning precious fuel for warmth. Russian soldiers understood their homeland's power now. Every day the temperature dropped, their relative advantage grew. Every blizzard that hit meant German effectiveness decreased. Time itself became a weapon. Defensive positions were chosen not just for tactical advantage, but for access to shelter and supplies. Russian troops could rotate soldiers to warm areas, Germans couldn't. This meant Russian defenders stayed combat-ready while their enemy grew weaker each week. The realization was profound. Geography and climate were as important as bullets and bombs. The impact of this understanding would echo far beyond this single winter. The turning point. January 1942. The German advance had completely stopped. Russian soldiers launched their first major winter counteroffensive. The results shocked both sides. German divisions that had seemed invincible in summer now struggled to hold basic defensive positions. Equipment failures reached critical levels. Entire units reported more casualties from cold than from combat. Morale collapsed as soldiers realized they'd been sent into an impossible situation. Russian forces pushed forward in conditions they understood. They knew how to march in deep snow. Their equipment functioned in extreme cold because it was designed for it. Their supply lines, though damaged, still operated on familiar territory. The psychological impact was enormous. German troops who had conquered most of Europe now faced an enemy they couldn't outmaneuver or outfight: the Russian winter itself. No amount of training or courage could overcome inadequate preparation for nature's force. By February, the situation was clear. The swift victory Germany planned had failed. What came next would be years of devastating conflict. This one miscalculation would haunt Germany's strategy for the rest of the conflict. The lasting impact. Russian soldiers who survived that first winter carried the lesson forward. They understood that victory wasn't just about weapons or tactics. It was about understanding the environment and preparing properly. German military leadership tried to correct the mistake. The following year, they ensured winter equipment reached the front lines. But the damage was done. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers had been lost to cold and frostbite. Equipment worth millions was destroyed or abandoned. Most importantly, the image of invincibility was shattered. The psychological advantage shifted permanently. Russian forces now believed they could win. German troops now feared the calendar as much as the enemy. Every autumn brought anxiety about whether winter gear would arrive in time. Military historians would later identify this as one of the critical turning points, not because of a single battle, but because of a failure to respect nature's power. The lesson was simple but profound. No military strategy succeeds if it ignores basic environmental reality. And that lesson would be remembered by military planners for generations.
The final revelation. What Russian soldiers realized about Germany's winter mistake went beyond tactics or equipment. They discovered a fundamental truth about conflict itself. Modern technology and superior training mean nothing if basic preparation is ignored. The most advanced military in the world at that time was brought to a standstill by something as predictable as weather. German leadership's overconfidence led them to dismiss what Russian soldiers knew instinctively. Winter always comes, and it shows no mercy. This realization changed how military campaigns were planned forever. Future operations factored in climate, seasonal changes, and environmental preparation as core elements, not afterthoughts. The cost of ignoring nature had been demonstrated in the most devastating way possible. Russian soldiers who witnessed that winter understood they had seen history turn, not through a single heroic battle, but through the slow, grinding reality of poor preparation meeting harsh conditions. The lesson remained clear: respect the environment you fight in, or it will fight against you. That truth, learned in the frozen fields of 1941, would haunt military strategy forever. The Eastern Front Winter Campaign exposed how German unpreparedness created a turning point in history. Russian soldiers' winter resilience proved stronger than any advanced technology. The Nazi invasion Russia faced nature's fury, leading to a devastating winter battle that shifted momentum forever. Russian winter counterattack 1941 demonstrated that environmental awareness matters as much as military strength. This winter campaign failure taught future generations a critical lesson: never underestimate the power of preparation. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe for more untold moments from history. What other winter battles should we explore? Let us know below.